But today, as you so rightly stated, is about production design and not the 15 other things that we could talk about.
Absolutely. And there's plenty to talk about in terms of production design with Slammer, because it's a sci-fi thriller. So it's not just a movie about Joe Bloggs in his apartment, seeing his friends, hanging out. And, you know, production design would require dressing existing spaces and making a version of a standard environment. Instead, Slammer requires that, but also it needed some I'm reticent of using the phrase, but some out of the box thinking. And the top of this, I segued into becoming the production designer. I think it was in very large part because of my bullish manner of suggesting what needed to be done in terms of production design and posing questions right from the moment that you started talking to me about Slammer, rather than saying, well, that'll be someone else's job. I kept chipping in little ideas, and
yes.
The more ideas I chipped in, the more I crept into that role, seeped in like a virus.
Absolutely, and like a virus from the Matrix. I mean, for those who don't know about a production designer, as well as having a huge impact on the design of the entire production, the sets, the costumes, the space, as Murray mentioned. But I would say that a production designer in this case was almost how to do the magic trick of these different worlds. We had, it's not giving anything away, we had the world of the apartment, as you mentioned, we had the world of the med prison, and the amount of design required to create the spaces by which Jamie and the director of photography and all the other guys, the costume and all the other departments could work within that space. So it's a massive, massive team effort. But fundamentally, I as director would say, well, I have an idea. And I remember like physically drawing out an idea of what I thought. And it was sort of inspired by Dial M for Murder. And it was inspired by, different spaces, independent films that I've seen. And I'd draw it out and I'd give it to you. And then you'd be like, right, well, I've got to rework that now and Murrayify it. And then that would then go to somebody like Mr. Passmore, who would then take that and go, well, we now need CAD drawings. And then there had to be a discussion of how it would look. There had to be discussion of materials and so on and so forth. So there is a massive long, it interconnects, like the virus is a good analogy because it interconnects with absolutely everything, every frame of this film.
Exactly. And I think it's worth people understanding the breadth of work that needed to go on, as you've said already, from the team and from the macro level down to the micro level with production design on Slammer, because in the earlier stages, when you first approached me, the script for Slammer was still evolving, and there were elements of that script or the story as it now exists that at that point did not exist. For example, the Hanscrest Corporation. So that is something that exists on a macro level in Slammer that has sort of formed part of the language of what Slammer is as a world, so to speak. Yeah. I hate talking about universes in films and things like that, but it's true that we had to sort of develop our own little world, our own environment, because we were creating something that was this slightly off-kilter version of the real world. where all of this future tech could realistically exist, where politics slightly slanted, where so many elements that people would recognize are just a little bit slightly wrong.
Yes.
So from that macro level of this global corporation, Hansegret, whose lovely mugs are just behind me.
Yeah, looking fantastic. Yeah.
Down to the micro level, actually sort of encapsulated by that way, the mugs and the drinks. So these were used as props, and these are the drinks which Anne it's her favorite drink. It's created by the Hansegret Corporation. So those things needed labels. We needed to define how that was going to look. We needed to decide what the drink was and what the nature of the liquid was inside that. And that was the case with most of the props that we were putting together, and they needed designing and then creating. And as you said earlier, elements of costume as well, like I keep pointing in the wrong direction, like the wonderful med suit here,
yes.
Which with a low budget for this type of film needed to be created with some lateral thinking.
Absolutely. I mean, but we can
couldn't just go and make off the shelf. We couldn't make things ourselves. We had to create from not really even off the shelf stuff. We had to cobble together what we could and find pre-made items that we could in the same way as films used to before 3D printing.
Yes.
We had to make things from existing things and glue things together and respray things and at things with a different pair of eyes.
Yeah.
Try and imagine what that item might be. And I don't want to give away what some of it's made of, but it's made of pre-existing.
You can say
Well,
if every filmmaker who's working on their debut knows that they have to get the sellotape out, get the Pritt stick out, get the gonna physically make things. I was just so unbelievably glad to be able to have discussions on things like the med suit, the med tech suit, something that the character is going to wear. Again, trying not to talk about spoilers, but that became a huge part of this film that in the film has a huge impact. And so if you had, we talked about buying a Tesla suit. What do you call them? The sort of the racing suits, and sort of modifying that. And then we looked at the budget, and then we thought about, well, could we just get sort of a costume, and spray it one way or that the other? And we were like, well, we can do that, but then it won't do the job it's meant to do. And then we looked at the VFX budget, and we were like, okay, well, we've only got this on VFX, so it'll have to be some sort of combination of lots of different things. And the first time that you joined it, I'd already had months of conversations with Danny. She was going to be the one who, before lockdown, she was going to be the one that just was to build it and send it over. She's based in Los Angeles. And through our conversations on the previous film that I did with her, we talked about the med suit then. Fast forward to where the budget is getting really, really tight, and Danny's not able to come over from Los Angeles to London. She had done some designs. You took that and run with it. You liaised very closely with Danny. Then we had the lovely Sina, who you found, I believe. I can't remember how we met Sina, but
it was through a contact of mine, and she was working as a nanny for his friend's children.
Right.
And her mother is a seamstress, seamstress. Yeah. She had a sewing machine and said, "Yeah, I would love to get involved." And as you've already mentioned, both Danny and Sina were instrumental in creation of the med suit. obviously as production designer, I was directing the sort of organization of that.
Yeah.
But, from Danny's original concepts and designs, which I worked alongside her to develop those, and then Sina created further designs and did a lot of the seamstress work. It was a very collaborative process, because that version of the med suit was then worked on by myself, using a mannequin that we had in the studio, and then that version was sent out to LA to Danny, who then did some further work on it using her skills. That was then sent back to me, a couple of final tweaks, and there we had it. So
and it's amazing that the pattern, if you look carefully, like everything on there means something, you know. And so when Flora playing Anne Waterman is therefore wearing it, there is this I would say genuine excitement. You know, the leather jacket comes off and she gets put in this med suit, and at that point the audience doesn't know, is it, is it an instrument of torture, which it isn't. I should say that right off the bat. But is it like, what's it going to do to her? All these questions should, in the audience's mind, jump up or appear, or whatever questions do in one's brain.
Present themselves.
Thank you. And then, of course, you've got this sort of medical theme. You've got the color schemes within the prison. You've got how the med prison interconnects with the suit. All of this stuff had to be worked out, and that's just one element of many elements.
And it's probably worth explaining as well how, as you sort of intimated there with the med suit, how in terms of the production design, many of those elements are interconnected and they're part of a broader palette for the film in general, which some people might not necessarily recognize or even care about. But as part of the language of designing this film and designing the look of this film, relating back to our, pointing the wrong way again, our fictional corporation, Hansegret, it trickles down from there, because I looked at films which I have loved in the past. I'm a big fan of sci-fi anyway, and the likes of the Tyrell Corporation in Blade Runner, or the Cyberdyne systems in Terminator,
yes,
or even the Nakatomi Corporation in Die Hard. They are pivotal characters within the film. They're elements that are identified, especially in the instance of something like Cyberdyne or the Tyrell Corporation.
Yes,
corporations that shape the look and feel of the film, and they shape the way that the characters interact with them. So when I designed the brand for the Hansegret Corporation, I'll just use my thumb there, that's an easy way to it has a logo which uses a geometric shape, as well as having a little star which is supposed to be a little bit like a fairy wand. So it's kind of like a fairy wand, and it's also something shooting off to the stars. So there's a sort of spacey kind of theme to it as well.
Yeah.
So that geometric element then made its way into the med prison, which has walls that are entirely populated by geometric shapes.
Yeah.
The prison itself is designed as a geometric shape, so we're talking about hexagons and octagons, and they're the two geometric shapes that everything then revolves around. The med suit then has a series of geometric shapes, both in its fabric and in other elements of it. And the designs that you mentioned, Mr. Passmore, so that's Michael Passmore, our set builder, and his son Dan.
Yeah.
to whom I'm hugely indebted, because their work on both creating the 3D CADs and the conversations that we had around the design of the Med Prison and then the construction of it, which they took care of, we wouldn't have that crucial set if it weren't for them. And you know, that was part of the team work that was absolutely critical, especially when you're working on a low budget. Absolutely critical in getting the film made and being able to create something that was, you know, solid and believable and worked in the context of all the different camera moves and things that were needed for creating the film.
And you touched on some brilliant you know, you covered a lot of ground there, because when the film starts, the film is a British independent film that is is an apartment. We do see Anne's work, which is important. You know, she's this great scientist. She's, you know, a lot of press around what she's doing, but fundamentally we're presenting an apartment. At that point you have no idea which direction we're going to go. And the apartment was a challenge in itself, because it's not like we were going to walk through to the kitchen, or we're going to see John have go to the loo, or we're going to go to the and have the scene in the bedroom, which is in 90% of all films. You know, it was very much emphasizing that claustrophobia in the apartment. And I think your design well, certainly your design, but then with Michael and Dan with the blinds, for example, which is, the blinds are specifically chosen because they're like bars on a prison, if you look at them in a certain way, which feeds into John's agoraphobia. Then you've got the theme of isolation for the Med Prison, and every visual frame sort of emphasizing that. Then, so you haven't got that many locations, which means that all the visuals you've got to make the most of the visuals you've got. And if you're going to create anything, any coverage of any scene, you've got to be very careful, because if it was a massive Hollywood film, you would have Anne breaking out the prison in the first 20 minutes, then you'd have a car chase, and, you know, would travel the globe. Explosions and buildings and crumbling and what have you, and that's the production designer on that film has to rethink.
Would not have been me.
The production designer on that film has an army of 500 people to do these things or more, whereas we were like, okay, and again, you were instrumental in this. It's like, okay, we've got a budget of X, we're not going over that budget because we don't have it. Therefore, the calculation of that budget and the impact has to be so unbelievably careful. And one of your talents is not only what we can do budget-wise, which is a skill set that you showed over this entire duration, but you were like, well, actually, if I just like problem solving. So like, if I just take this from my old boiler, and I take that from something that I had from 2 years ago, and I use that to create this, then we can use this for that. And it was like, it's unbelievable. It was unbelievable, actually, what we were able to do.
Well, and it's as with so many things in life, there was some fortune and happenstance that led to that, as you've mentioned. The fact that in my house I happened to be having my boiler replaced, and the old boiler was thrown out. Parts of it then made their way into the med suit. So just there is part of my old boiler attached to the med suit. And they're small elements, but they're things which would take time and budget to create from scratch. And some of those elements had metallic finishes and peculiar shapes, which perhaps otherwise I wouldn't have designed myself.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be able to look at things, as I said earlier, to look at them with a different set of eyes, see where they can fit. And there's a great deal of fun to be had in covering your hands in super glue and getting properly stuck in. So, this film required me to be hands-on and work from macro down to micro to to gluing the things together myself, up to creating whatever the visual palette we needed, in tandem with Jamie Corn, our DOP, to liaise closely with him and ask questions of him about his color schemes and his lighting intentions and how that would work
exactly
together with the design of the prison and the moves that he was going to need to make with the camera and what his visual language was going to be. So at every level, there were collaborations needed, speaking to hair and makeup and defining elements of what they were doing as well, putting forward designs for tattoos. Some of them, some elements didn't get used, but it's still part of the overall creative process to be able to put those things together, to put them onto paper, to design them on the computer, and discuss them, and then they end up in the final frames or they end up on the cutting room floor. But it's still part of what informs the language of the film and sometimes informs the way that the script is developed as well.
Absolutely, and that collaborative process was so crucial. I mean, we should definitely talk about the hairbrush, and we should definitely talk about the rat in the med suit. So the hairbrush. The hairbrush was something that you made, very specifically for the film, where that is the hairbrush is very much a symbolic object that is used and has a very powerful meaning within the film. The rat, the theme of animals, and in this case, the rat in the med suit.
So again, it was a collaborative process, because in an early production meeting, when we spoke about having a rat in a med suit, first of all, my wonderful art director, Lisa Muller, who was on was able to work on the first part of the film and then unfortunately wasn't available for the rest of it.
Yeah.
He sourced the rat from the wonders of eBay. So someone had stuffed a rat and put it on eBay. So she found.
Thank you very much.
And then we took that rat. I found the box from the wonderful IKEA.
Yay!
It then went into a box, but as you've rightly said, it needed to be in a mini med suit. So a young lady called Cody put the mini med suit together, and then with super glue all over my hands, I attached the little med suit pipe that I'd created, took some of the same material that we created the med prison with, that into the box, some of the same signage that occurs in the med prison itself. So basically creating a mini med prison in a little glass box. So yeah, a collaborative process, 3 people involved to make one fleeting prop that appears at some stage in the movie. I won't even know when it appears, but
when it appears, and it's fleeting, but it's quite a powerful visual metaphor for what's going on, and I'm hugely appreciative for those little details, especially when, regardless of when they're in the film, for a large chunk of the film, such as the med prison or something that's fleeting, I think people appreciate those little subtle details.
And it's important to give as much energy to the small things as it is to the large things, because this
100%.
is the world and people have to believe that it is. So hopefully in the context of watching this, looking at that real med suit and this mini med suit, you can see the common ground between them, and you can see the color palettes and the way that the two of them have some similarities, which they don't share any screen time together, but or not any real screen time together, but there's common ground between them, and hopefully that comes through. And it's also worth mentioning that there are props that got made which then didn't even need to be in the film. So I put this one here because it was one that got created for some futuristic goggles or sort of binoculars.
Yeah.
And those were put together, and I'm still quite pleased with the way that they turned out, because it was just a junk shop glued together thing. But you know, sometimes stuff takes a bit of time to create, looks quite nice, but doesn't end up being in the final version of the script. So there's a lot of work from everybody that goes on in the background that may not end up in the final part of the film, but as I've said a couple of times already, it's still all vital work and important to be done.
Hugely vital.
From one thing to the next.
Hugely vital. And I want to talk about the drinks, because the drink is a theme as well. These drinks, which Murray created the label for, the drink, you know, by name, is used by the character, and we get the indication that she is almost like addicted to the drink. So we have this amazing situation where, imagine for example that you go and you buy your whatever it is from the corner shop, and you get your favorite drink every morning, and it's like an energy drink. Like an extreme energy drink, let's say.
Yes. Energy water it is.
Okay, energy water. And I forget what's actually in it that Flora had to drink it.
It's actually quite healthy. It's activated charcoal.
Oh, nice.
So that is used quite often by people as a healthy addition to food and water and drinks. It settles over time. So the props that we have, I don't know if you can tell from any of those, some of them have started to settle. But yeah, it meant that because our lead actress was going to need to drink this, we couldn't have something that was a caffeinated energy drink, because she would have been bouncing off the walls after take 20 of drink that drink.
Yes.
So, and initially we had a drink. It was this kind of Dayglow orange, but during the course of the design of the film, it actually made a great deal more sense for it to be dark, for it to suit her as a very gothic looking character, also for it to be something that she could actually drink on set more easily. And there was a beautiful side effect of her drinking this, which was that with each mouthful of this that Flora drank, it slightly gave a greyish, blackish tinge to her mouth and her teeth, making her look that little bit iller. So if you watch it and you see the times that she drinks this drink, you notice that her mouth, her lips, her tongue just have a very slight blackish tinge to them, which adds a sort of slightly sinister edge to it. It was an unexpected element of the creation of this drink, but it worked out quite well. So yeah, that's important. And again, it's something that has a subtle touch where in its design there is a little logo that makes the dot on the eye. So that was an important element of it, and that's a common element that exists throughout the film. I won't give any more away about it than that, but that's something to look out for. So yeah, that was a good, simple little prop to create, one that we needed lots of copies of because Flora needed to be able to drink lots of those, and we needed a stack of them in the shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good fun to work on that.
Well, I really appreciate that level of detail, and it was really fun because to see these things get used, and there was an ongoing joke about where we can put the mug in the different shots so that we could see the logo, and how can we fit that into the film where it's not obvious, where it's almost subliminal. And positioning the mug in such a way that the audience just goes, okay, yeah, Hans Gret's on the brain, which is they need to be thinking about, but at the same time, not have it in close up all the time.
And incidentally, it's worth mentioning to give people an idea of the budget we were working with, that these wonderful Hans Gret mugs were actually one of the most expensive individual props that we had, because I ordered a set of them so that
Yeah.
we have enough to use as props on set, but also to give to some of the crew as little mementos afterwards.
I've got mine.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got mine. Pride of place.
You know, a slightly more costly thing because they were professionally made in their entirety. Whereas things like the drink bottles, the labels were designed by me and then created separately, and I bought the bottles and created the drink and wrapped the labels around myself. So that was a much more manual process, whereas the mugs were just made as you see them and delivered to us. So all I had to do was design it and send it off.
Nice. Well, like, you know, Spielberg, when he made Jaws, he was wearing the Jaws T-shirt. So, you know, Spielberg had Jaws T-shirts, and we had Hans Gret mugs.
But certainly, working with John and Jackie, our heads of costume, that was an absolute pleasure, and their knowledge of the costumes that they provided, and their sensitivity to the characters and creating, putting together and suggesting costumes that would work well for those characters, made my job a lot easier because I had to liaise with them, and they looked to me to see whether their decisions fitted correctly with the film. So both you and I were at all the costume fittings and
absolutely for all the different characters.
Closely.
But in case we don't get a chance to do John and Jackie podcast, it's great to give them a shout out on their knowledge on costume. We definitely will be doing one on hair and makeup and prosthetics and other visual and other things that feed into the visuals and the design of the film. So we'll do that at some point with the guys. And you know, you and I would be having conversations about, well, not only how are we going to do this for block 1, but how the hell are we going to do it for block 3, you know, to get the film over the line. And right up until the end of block 3, you know, there were little design decisions at Beaufort House, or design decisions in the car park, or that had to be considered. And again, you know, the car sequence and all these other things that we're like, well, while you're doing that, Ted, I'll go and do this to help you in preparation for that. And this whole, it's collaborative effort
and it's still ongoing. You know, as we sit here and speak now, we're in post-production. There are a whole series of elements to do with that, which I'm still putting together, so that from briefs through to actual physical designs, which I'm then instructing and passing on to the people who are doing those pieces of work, from visual effects to opening and closing credits. It's such a large team of people.
Yes.
And as production designer and in everyday life, someone who likes to have fingers in lots of pies, it's keeping me constantly on my toes and giving me an opportunity to work on so many different elements of the film and bring all of those threads together and ensure consistency across them, which it's just great fun. And I can't wait to see the finished product, because I think seeing all of that join up and see what people's reaction to it that will hopefully pay off, and hopefully everyone will be as excited about it as I am.
Well, well said, and thank you, Murray. You know, the best business partner I could hope for, and I hope people have enjoyed. I hope people enjoy the film, which we're aiming for a September screening. So details to follow on that.
Thanks for chatting to me today, Ted. Enjoyed it. Always to work with you. Loving the show.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
Take care. Speak soon.
All right. Bye.